What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Cjthecheesedj here, and we are back with a brand new top 7 for you guys today. I know we haven't done a top 7 in a while, we've been sticking to the top 5s and the top 10s, but I feel like this list does deserve a top 7 because, well, we just couldn't come up with an extra 3 dinos that really made it on the list, but we had also had an extra 2 dinos that did suit pretty well on the list. Anyway, as you guys can most likely tell from the title, today we are talking about top 7 utility dinos. Now, by utility dinos, I do mean dinos that can gather stuff, but I also mean dinos that don't gather stuff, if that makes sense. So any dino in the game of Ark can be classified as a utility dino. These ones, however, are kind of the ones that produce stuff you tame so that they can produce more things and stuff like that. You'll get the gist of it as we go into the video, but without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Alrighty, so coming in at number 7, we have the Otus. Now, the Otus is one of those dinos that, in my opinion, does suit the utility role, mainly because you can pretty much sacrifice these guys to kill them for mutton. Now, if you're on maps such as the center, the island, aberration, it's going to be a little bit harder to come across Otuses. So if you do transfer over to, say, Ragnarok, for example, where there are plenty of them and they flourish greatly, you can tame up a pair of them, bring them back to whatever map you're on, breed them up, and you'll just have an endless supply of mutton. As long as you don't kill the 2 parents, you'll be sweet. Now, this is great because a lot of the dinosaurs in Ark utilize mutton as one of their high tier taming effectivenesses. So for example, you've got kibble, and then below kibble you've got mutton. So that is for most of the dinos in Ark that eat raw meat. So you'll be pretty sweet if you tame up these. Now, as well as that, you can also use scissors on these guys in order to get their pelts. Now, pelts aren't really used too widely in the world of Ark because obviously you're only going to really use it for making fur armor, but you can still use them to get pelt, which in my opinion is a pretty effective way of making them look kind of cute and getting pelts. You can see there we've got 30 wool, and you can use this wool for pretty much pelt, whatever you need to use for pelt, and they look kind of cute. So that is the main reason why the Otus are on this list, because of their pelt and because you can pretty much sacrifice them and get a ton of mutton, which will allow you to make kibbles, which will allow you to tame up dinosaurs, you name it. Now guys, coming in at number 6, we have the Polovia. Now the Polovia, in my opinion, is a utility dinosaur, namely because he has the ability to bury underground and hide whatever he has on him underground with him. Now, you guys must probably thinking, well, how does that make him a utility dino? Well, say for example, someone comes along and decides to raid you. If you've got a Polovia hidden away, you can always come back from the raid with a decent amount of gear, depending on how much you put in your Polovia. As well as that, they're really not noticeable. Like, that's the Polovia mound right there. Look at these rocks. Like, they look like normal rocks. So the Polovia blends right in. And the only way your enemy is going to find your Polovia is if they've got a Parasaur or a Direwolf. And which case then you should probably kiss your Polovia goodbye, but these guys can still serve the purpose of storing a heap of stuff on them. As well as that, they've got ridiculous amounts of weight, and you can always use them as base defense dinos if you feel like you're going to push out and get ahead of the enemy when they raid you. Because they have that stun ability where they jump out, that enables them to stun your enemy, even knock them off dinos, which in the long run can actually defend you and protect you from getting raided. So guys, the Polovia comes in at number 6 on this list. Alrighty guys, now coming in at number 5, we have none other than the snails, otherwise known as the Acatina. Now, these guys are pretty damn amazing. So they work the same in similar fashion to the dung beetle, where that they produce cementing paste every couple of minutes. Now, it's technically called Acatina paste, but it works exactly the same as cementing paste. So you can currently see here, it's even got like the same picture, so it looks exactly the same. Now, they passively produce it while being set to wander, as well as poop it out. Now, another really cool thing about these guys is that they also produce organic polymer, which is a lot less produced than the cementing paste. So I believe it's every 1 minute you get, every 10 minutes you get 1 cementing paste, and every 90 minutes you get 2 polymer. So these guys are pretty useful if you want to go about getting polymer and cementing paste. As well as that, they also increase the spoil time of organic polymer. So the organic polymer spoiling time is increased to 90 minutes instead of the standard 20 minutes, which also makes these guys really viable and valuable. Now, as well as that, they're also relatively easy to tame if you have yourself well situated and you've got all your resources going and everything like that, because you need to have a steady supply of sweet veggie cakes in order to keep these guys fed to make sure that they keep producing your cementing paste and organic polymer. Now, like I said, they do require sweet veggie cakes to tame as well, and they're really easy passive tames to tame. Now, once you've also tamed them up, you can simply keep them in a cage, very similar to the dung beetle. Just have them on wandering and they will eventually produce you a ton of cementing paste and organic polymer. So guys, that's why the Acatinas are number 5 on the list. So guys, coming in at number 4, we have the giant queen bee. Now, the giant queen bee is a tameable creature, and obviously you can use her to produce honey. Now, you can currently see here, these are the hives that she spawns in. You do have to make sure that the hive contains the queen, because if it doesn't, then no queen will spawn. You can see there is the giant queen bee. All you need to do is walk up to her, feed her mutton or kibble, and she will actually tame up. Now, once you guys have successfully tamed her up, you'll then be presented the option to obtain a beehive. All you need to do is hit E and you'll actually get the beehive. Now, this beehive is a placeable structure, very similar to the refining forges, the smithies, and stuff like that. And then with this beehive, you can actually place it down wherever you'd like, and it will produce honey over time. Now, honey is a very essential sort of item to have in Ark because it's used to produce the sweet veggie cakes, which are used to tame a couple of creatures on this list, such as the Otus and the Acatina. As well as that, you do need the sweet veggie cakes in order to heal your soakers when you're PvPing. So honey is definitely one of the high tiered items you will need in Ark. That is why the queen bee is on the list, because of her ability to produce the honey, which you will need for pretty much most of the N tier aspects of Ark. So guys, let's move on to number 3. Now, coming in at number 3, we have none other than the Mantis. Now, the Mantis comes onto the list at number 3 due to it having the ability of being able to equip weapons and tools that you would normally use to gather up resources. Now, at the moment, because it's Ark, it's currently bugged and you can't actually use any tools or weapons on the Mantis. But when you are able to, they are amazing. So pretty much the higher the tool is, so the quality I mean, so like if you got a journeyman, an apprentice, a mastercraft, the higher the quality of the tool, the more resources you will gather with said tool using the Mantis. Now, a lot of you guys are probably wondering, well, what would you really use the Mantis on to gather? Well, the element nodes in Extinction are one of those things. If you equipped a hatchet onto the Mantis, he will actually gather a crap ton of element on Extinction from those element nodes, which is really great if you want to get a crap ton of element. Now, obviously, you can just use your normal hatchet and do it yourself. However, the Mantis's melee damage also scales with the amount of resources you gather. So if you've got a really strong Mantis with a high melee damage, you'll easily be able to gather hundreds of element from these nodes. So it's definitely worth investing in a Mantis for these particular reasons. And as well as that, you can still use them to gather flint, thatch, and all of that. I wouldn't really recommend them to gather stone or anything like that because their weight is not the greatest thing out there, but they are still very valuable and they do have their uses. So guys, let's move on to number 2. Now guys, coming in at number 2, we have the Mose Chops. Now, the Mose Chops, due to a pretty recent update, is now rideable, and you can use him to gather a crap ton of things. Now, the really cool thing, whoa, that was really far. The really cool thing about the Mose Chops is that he has a whole heap of different harvesting levels. So you can see here, you can currently use him to gather organic polymer, leech blood, rare mushrooms, rare flour, raw prime fish meat, raw prime meat, or sap. Now, you guys are probably wondering, well, who's really going to utilize any of that? Well, these guys are absolutely amazing for gathering organic polymer. Now, that is pretty much honestly the only thing you really be using the Mose Chops for, I find anyway, because these guys are nuts. So you can see there we just got 25 organic polymer. If we were to jump off here and just grab ourselves a sword and a club, you'll see that we grab significantly less. Now, as well as that, the levels on the Mose Chops scale with his actual levels. So you can invest levels into his melee damage and he'll still have levels for his harvesting levels. So for example, we'll just real quickly kill this Kairuku here and we'll showcase to you guys how much actual polymer we get. So you're technically supposed to use the club to gather polymer off Kairukus, and you can see there that, well, this is awkward. We got more organic polymer than using the Mose chops. A lot more organic polymer. Wow, that's actually embarrassing. Okay, so the reason we actually got a lot more organic polymer is because our melee damage is in the 400s. So we've just leveled up our Mose chops here in his melee damage and his harvesting levels, and you can see he's got an extra 114% organic polymer. So these guys are great. As well as that, if you set them onto Wandering and Neutral, they actually harvest the bodies. So you can actually build a Mantis trap in the Desert of Ragnarok and actually kite Mantises in there and just drop them in, and your Mose chops can come along and kill them, allowing you to gather a whole heap of organic polymer while you go about doing other things. So I would definitely invest in the Mose chops if you guys don't already have one. As well as that, their eggs are actually really good kibble as well. They're one of the highest tiers of kibble, and if you don't need them for the organic polymer, you can always use them for leech blood, rare mushrooms, rare flowers, prime fish meat, prime meat, or sap. So guys, finally, let's move on to number 1. Now guys, finally, the creature coming in at number 1. This guy right here is the real MVP, and he quite literally shits all over the other dinos on this list. Literally, like, this guy's just the king of them all. At number 1, we have the Gacha. Now, you guys are probably well aware of what these guys are capable of doing. Pretty much what they allow you to do is you give them stone, you give them flint, you give them whatever you want. Any resources you don't want to use, any weapons, any blueprints, and they will produce Gacha crystals. Now, from these Gacha crystals, they can produce various resources. As you can see here, this one allows us to produce flint, fiber, sand, sap, congealed gas balls, and red crystallized sap. Now, each one has a different set, and if you get really lucky, which honestly, I was really surprised we got this guy because I've tried spawning in like hundreds of gachas before and still hadn't got an element dust. I spawned in 4, and one of them had element dust. Element dust. So with element dust, you can, if you obviously get enough of it, you can turn it into element, which that in itself is very valuable. You can then clone these gachas and just have a bunch of them producing element dust. Now you can also see here there's silica pearls, clay, fungal wood, raw salt, fragmented green gems. There are quite a few different combinations. Sap, silk, thatch, fragmented green gems. You can also get ones that produce black pearls as well, and organic polymer. So these guys do still crap on all the previous dinos. Now all you need to do is feed them stone, and if I remember correctly, I don't know if this still works, if you fed them war maps, they would actually produce really good blueprints and items for you. Now, as well as that, you can also increase their crafting skill so that they produce higher tiered weaponry as well for you. Now, if you do use snow owl pellets as well, that also increases the rarity of the gem. For a second here, we're just going to kill these guys off because they're sad. They're not going to produce anything for us. There we go. That should cheer them up a little bit. Are you going to get cheered up, or is it because his body's still here? So you guys can see here that they do produce the Gacha crystals. Now, depending on what you set their production to, they could produce any of them. Obviously, if you were smart and you wanted to stock resources, you'd go organic polymer and you'd keep an eye out on what crystals they produce, and you'd keep them separate from all the other Gachas you'd have, because you can have a whole mill of these guys. Then when you're ready and you need organic polymer, you simply pop the crystal and you obviously get organic polymer. Now, we got flint because we didn't have our production set to organic polymer, but these guys are great. They can fill any sort of niche that you need, any sort of resource that you need. They're wonderful. As well as that, if you chuck in some, say, a Mastercraft pickaxe or something that you don't need, these guys will produce out something of lesser quality, but maybe something that you can use. So guys, the Gachas definitely deserve the #1 spot on this list, and I think they're probably one of the best utility dino to get in all of Ark. So guys, I'm going to wrap up the video here. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the video down below. If there's any sort of changes or anything like that you'd like to mention. One dinosaur I do want to mention real quick before we end the video is the Oviraptor. The Oviraptor was going to be on the list. I decided not to put it on there because I just didn't. Let me know what you guys think of that as well, but it definitely deserves an honorable mention. But guys, that'll be it for today's video, so thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next one.